you have everything. You have the printer, you have the computer.
And
They
I don't know how to make it work. That's the problem.
Yes, so that is known as ignorance. That I
I
don't
know
know. I
it's
don't
good.
know.
It's super ignorance.
So that is the fundamental principle of Eastern wisdom. I don't know that the real self is full of permanent peace and happiness. So who does not know? My ego says, I do not know. Then what happens? That ego says, have pasta, be happy. Have a cup of tea, be happy.
Okay.
You see that ignorance? You see the level of I don't know. So masters every time says that this real self is full of peace and happiness, and that is overshadowed by the ego, which claims how to experience happiness in pasta, in chicken, in car, in wealth. See that. Exactly the same simile it works. So you see that this is the problem. Why it has a problem? Now I made you understand. Now I made you understand that the printer can work in any computer and you can scan the document. You need not to go outside. But still, the knowledge is now with you, but you do not know how to install. Same way. That is why the master comes in the picture. You know the real self is full of peace and happiness.
That's
And
right.
still,
The other day I had the wrong master. But then
you
you have to have the right master too.
you see, yes, yes. You should. So yes, the moment if the master is of the mindfulness is confused, so he takes a or the master takes the route of the science. He tries to prove it. It will not work. The master has to use the principles of Eastern wisdom to work.
Okay.
Do you
I
see
look
that?
for another master.
So, same thing with the Canon printer, your printer, and your computer. And now, see, because you thought this printer will not connect to the computer, that's why you went to your friend's house to get this document scanned and sent to them. This is what happens to our mind. The moment I'm in anxiety, I'm in stress, I say,
Right?
"Oh, let me take a pill, let me drink a cup of tea. I don't know, I am stressed, I have anxiety. There is no anxiety, there is no stress. My real nature is full of peace and happiness."
That's right. I don't do a job. I just let it go. That will make me happy.
So even if you let it go with the reminder that peace is and happiness are my essential nature, you are always free from anxiety and stress and suffering. Then you see the problem and you find the solution. But when we don't see that happiness is inside, then we start wandering here and there at all places, and that leaves us suffering, sorrow, sorrow. So the master says the very first principle, you'll be surprised that every master says that I have not written a book for others. I have written a book for myself so my masters can check whether I have the same state of realization which my masters had. They don't want to be the best selling authors. First point. The second point, every book you find, there is a word Mangala Charan. What is this Mangala Charan? Mangala Charan. Mangal means auspiciousness. What is auspiciousness? So auspiciousness, auspicious moment in the mind where we keep this ego aside to learn the principles of Eastern wisdom. Otherwise, this ego is going to complain. Ego says, I know. Ego says, I don't know. Ego says, what I know? I know pasta gives me happiness. I know coffee gives me happiness. But the real self says, oh, happiness is within you. So there is an auspicious moment. We say we keep the mind that is running happiness aside. Please, you stay outside. Let me first find out. So, how that happens? That brings up the topic of humility. When a seeker invokes humility, kindness, love for the knowledge of the Eastern wisdom passed on to the seeker by a teacher to remove the ignorance. Another problem that is solved by this Mangalacharan is we break the unholy wedlock. you know, Unholy marriage. Sometimes we say, no, they are not made for each other. They have been fighting and lot of problems, are there. They should not have married, with this guy or a girl. Unholy wedlock. So why I opened that topic? So there is an unholy wedlock
Mhm.
between the real and the unreal. What is real self and what is false self? The false self is nothing but the ego. That ego is dependent on the real self. How can you say that? How can we say that this real self is independent and the ego is dependent? Real self is independent because it is of the nature of consciousness. Ego borrows that consciousness, then it claims, I am. Are you getting it? That is why we have to keep that ego in the mind aside, which is constantly wandering and seeking happiness outside. So, what happens when we keep this ego aside? Then we enter into an auspicious moment. When we enter into an auspicious moment in the mind, meditation succeeds. So, every master who has written these great texts, they always adore uh, the journey of the Eastern wisdom with a humility. There is another meaning of Mangalacharan. It means walking the path rightly, adequately with the teacher, keeping aside the ego sense. Why with the teacher? Because the teacher in the Eastern wisdom, that is why we say master in a disciple tradition. So it is the principle taught by the teacher or master of the Eastern wisdom. Every principle helps us to break the knot, unholy wedlock. Every principle, if it goes inside. Why my master used to say a beautiful thing. First, he used to ask, are you intelligent? Yes. Then go back. If you are intelligent, then you are not suffering. My intelligence must give me the right knowledge so that I can prevent any kind of sorrow and suffering in my life. If it is not, then first accept even you may be extremely intelligent, but you are not able to bring an end to the suffering. Then ask the second question, why it is not? Why it is not? Why it is not happening? I'm very intelligent in computers, but I'm worse in my family relationship. You see that? Do you see? So we have millions and millions of cases. Every third person claims he or she is very intelligent, but he has or she has lot of stress. So I should ask, I do not ask this question. Why I do not ask this question? Because my mind is constantly claiming that I'm intelligent. The ego sense is there to keep aside the ego sense. And then I'm asking, okay, I am intelligent. Why it is not happening? Why I am living in stress and suffering? So when we ask this question, then we have to find an answer. When we have to find the answer, the Eastern wisdom and all their masters answers you that what is happening, you are searching happiness where it is not. If coffee gives you happiness, then everyone should drink coffee in the world, but which is not possible. Look at it. You drink coffee for a month or 2 months and 3 months. After then, the ego says, the mind says, okay, let me drop it. Let me drink some other coffee. So it means that happiness is not there in the coffee. Oh, do I understand? Yes, I understand. So now ask the third question, then where the happiness lies. So the master teaches us that happiness lies within. My master used to say a simple thing. So when you claim that now my intelligence is not working and I want to know where is the happiness, then I become humble. What is the meaning of humility? I know that I do not know where the happiness is located. How simple it is. Please guide me. Please educate me. So then my master used to say with a smile, can you think the way I am thinking even for a week? Why? Because my master also told me, you restart the thinking the way I am thinking. It has nothing to do with uh, hypnotizing, but you restart the thinking. Why you restart the thinking? Because your way of thinking is causing you the sorrow. So, what is that meaning that you start thinking the way I'm thinking? You start thinking over the principles of Eastern wisdom. Why? Because that will enter into your intellect, and the intellect will remove the doubt that the happiness is not within, followed by the practice, and you will enter into happiness. You see, everything logical, rational understanding. We don't say pray this God, meditate on this God. No. Why we should say that? When the happiness is inside you and we have to go outside to pray the God in a temple or a church, we don't need that. So it is purely a way to understand who am I, what is my real self, what is my true nature. Very first step is Mangala Charan. I have been saying Mangal. Mangal means auspicious. So there is one way to be very clear. In the intellect, I should be very clear. I know that I do not know happiness is within me. So the second question comes, then how to search that happiness? So Master says, keep aside all your knowledge because that knowledge will trigger your mind in search of happiness outside. Logical. That your mind is so much habituated, heavily conditioned to run after the thing and the object for the sake of happiness. So, can you keep the mind outside? Can you keep the ego aside? So, the moment you keep the ego aside, the mind is now ready to think totally in a fresh way. That fresh way of thinking is nothing but the Eastern wisdom. It is present in every human being. That knowledge is present in every human being. Now, see another point of Mangalacharan, then we will do the practice. You'll be, I think I discussed about it. So, who is my teacher? My teacher. And who is the teacher of my teacher? Then who is that teacher? You continue, go on searching. Who is the ultimate teacher? Once that intellect understands this principle clearly, the mind becomes so humble and kind, it is always ready to learn. Mind needs to be ready. So, what is that? Who is the teacher? Who was the first teacher? No, I can say, Eastern wisdom says Ved Vyas is the first teacher. But who is the teacher of Ved Vyas? So 10,000 years old tradition. Now we have reached to the one human master whose name is Ved Vyas. But who is the teacher of Ved Vyas? So our master says that teacher is the real self seated in your heart, revealed by meditation. Now find out what is the relationship between a teacher and the student in the master disciple tradition. Oh, that ultimate master is already seated in my heart. Yes. Do I know it? I don't know it. So I need a teacher. So the teacher represents physically your real self. To know it, once you know it, you are free. Are you getting it? Did you get it? Who is the ultimate teacher? The very ultimate teacher is the real self seated in your heart. That is the goal of meditation. But now my mind says, I don't know. So I need a teacher to learn. But who is that teacher? That teacher is representing outside your real self. But why he is representing your real self? Because he is strictly adhering to the knowledge of the Eastern wisdom. So you should receive the knowledge, you should follow the practice to reach to your real self within you. See the everything comes to you, to a seeker. See the beauty of this journey. So that is the way of Mangala Charan. So I respect, I adore the teacher because that teacher is representing my real self. And you follow your intellect. You understand it through the intellect. There is no blind belief. So ultimately, what happens? You reach to your real self and you enter into that state of pure consciousness, and the awakening takes place. Awakening takes place. This is what is the journey of the Eastern wisdom. Let us
Yes.
see and do the practice and see what happens